Why did she board last? No one noticed. That was the point. A narrow shuffle down the jet bridge, quiet steps on carpet. A faint scent of rain still clinging to her sweatshirt. She made no effort to move fast, no excuse about being late. Just there, a figure so plain she blurred into the background before anyone could decide whether to look twice. Oversized gray sweatshirt, black jeans, scuffed sneakers, hair tied back loose, as if she'd done it without looking in a mirror. No laptop. Bag, no sleek roller case, just a paperback novel in one hand. Its spine bent from years of travel, and a half-empty water bottle tucked under her arm. No one in row 5 looked up when she stopped beside them. Sarah Lawson slipped into her seat at the window without a word, buckled in, hands folded over. The novel, spine down, Flight 219 from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, was a predictable cross-country run. The cabin carried its usual mix: business travelers scanning emails, vacationing families whispering about hotel check-ins, a couple of tired parents trying to keep toddlers from wriggling into the aisle. It was all harmless noise, ringtones. The slow shuffle of overhead bin doors, the clipped rhythm of the flight attendant's safety announcements. To the man beside her, mid-40s, Bluetooth headset glued to his ear, she was invisible. To most people, she was invisible. The pilot's voice filled the cabin in that practiced, warm but not too warm way. A cruise at 32,000 feet, a small pocket of turbulence over Kansas. Half the cabin chuckled politely at a joke he probably made on every flight for the last 5 years. Sarah didn't smile. She didn't even look up. Her eyes stayed on the tarmac outside. Not the skyline, not the city she'd left behind. The ground crew, she noticed the subtle hand signals between 2 workers near the cargo hatch. A flick of fingers, the kind of gesture you might mistake for casual if you weren't trained to see what wasn't casual at all. Something in her stomach tightened. She looked away. The last thing she wanted was to fixate too soon. But when you've lived in the world she'd lived in, your mind starts taking pictures on its own. The first delay came 10 minutes later. Minor. Mechanical issue, the flight attendant said with a polished smile. We'll taxi in just a few more minutes. Passengers groaned softly. Heads dropped toward phones. Earbuds went back in. Sarah's eyes sharpened. The tall male attendant was checking the overhead bins again. Not casually, not absent-mindedly. A checklist in hand, yes. But his pen never touched paper. The female attendant nearby read from a laminated card she clearly didn't need too rehearsed, too timed. Most people would never see it. That was the point. 2 rows ahead, a woman leaned out into the aisle to take a selfie with her boyfriend. Behind her, 2 men traded glances across the row. A beat too quick, a shade too controlled. Sarah clocked facial tension. Thumb movements, the way they adjusted their wrists after making eye contact. She opened her novel and stared at the page without reading it. She hadn't read a word from it in weeks. She carried it because it made her look harmless. Boring. The seatbelt light pinned off. Before anyone could stand, the PA cracked again. We'll be just a little longer, folks. Another systems check. The words rolled off smooth. Too smooth. Then it happened. 2 rows back, a man coughed twice in quick rhythm, paused, coughed once more. The hairs on Sarah's neck rose. 3 months ago, she'd heard that exact cough sequence in a parking lot in Virginia, seconds before a car bomb took her handler apart and ended her official life for good. She forced herself to look naturally toward the aisle, spotting him over her shoulder. Mid-40s, average build, already looking away. Her pulse slowed, the way it always did when instinct took over. She leaned forward, palm against the seat in front of her, fingers brushing something cold and metallic beneath the cushion. Not hers, not standard. Outside, the aircraft door sealed. Engines hummed. Sarah closed her eyes. 6 years ago, she had been Echo November 5th, a covert field operative specializing in extractions and counterintelligence. Then Berlin happened. Her cover burned. 2 OIs dead. Identity erased. The agency told her she was done. She'd believed it, until now. Her overhead light flickered once. Then again, she didn't look up. Sarah unbuckled, stood, and walked toward the galley. Not for peanuts. Not for water. She stopped in front of the female attendant and said, "Hot tea. 3 sugars. No lemon." The woman froze. Not confusion. Not hesitation, recognition. When she returned with the tea, she slipped a napkin beneath the cup, without a word. Sarah carried both back to her seat, untouched. The tea wasn't for drinking. She unfolded the napkin in her lap. 14C suspect. Possible. Secondary. Weapon hidden. Cabin lockout initiated. You're cleared. She crushed the napkin into the paper cup and held it as if still sipping. The words weren't just an alert. They were authorization. Final clearance to act. Any means necessary. No backup. No safe house. No chain of command. And 9 rows between her and the man in 14C approached too soon, and she'd blow any chance of controlling the scene. Way too long, and... The cabin. Lights dimmed. The captain's voice again. Casual. For crew. Echo, November 5th. Prepare for weather. No passenger heard anything unusual. Sarah heard a warning. The pilot had just told her something was coming, and she needed to be ready. Her seatmate was still typing, oblivious to everything beyond the glowing screen. Good. She needed him to stay that way. She let her gaze drift down the aisle as though bored, counting rows without moving her head. Every detail mattered. Who was standing, who kept shifting in their seat, who avoided eye contact entirely. Row 14C. Mid-40s, white male, short hair, business casual. Navy blazer, gray slacks. His head rested back against the seat like he was asleep. But his breathing, she timed it, was controlled, shallow. Not sleep. Pretend. She pressed the attendant button. The same woman came. Name tag said Jessie, tight bun, calm face that couldn't hide the flicker in her eyes. I spilled the tea, Sarah said simply, holding out the empty cup. Jessie took it, her fingers brushing Sarah's just long enough to pass a small plastic luggage claim tag into her palm. Then she was gone, vanishing into the forward galley. Sarah kept her movements minimal, palming the tag under her thigh. Printed on it, UGS 418 Locker 18A. Galley Storage Compartment 4. Not an overhead bin, not under a seat. Whoever had planted something there had done it before boarding, meaning someone on the ground was in on it. She hated jobs like this. Inside help meant the rot went deeper than you could see. And she had no weapon. 2 years ago, she'd buried her last firearm at the bottom of a storage locker in New Jersey before disappearing. Dead identities didn't carry weapons. They carried nothing. Sarah stretched casually, walked down the aisle toward the rear restrooms. She let her eyes skim over every face without lingering, memorizing the patterns. 2 rows back from the suspect, a man in 21D gave her a glance that looked casual to anyone else. She'd seen that glance before. Secondary, near the rear galley. She pretended to adjust her shoe and bent low, just enough to see the corner of the hatch that matched the claim tag's location. Slightly lifted, disturbed. Her mind mapped the cabin like a blueprint. 14C, 21D, possibly more. She returned to her seat and shut her eyes, not to rest, but to listen. The sound of a zipper closing 2 rows away, a shift of weight, the subtle whisper of someone brushing fabric inside a coat. The captain's voice came. Again, smooth as glass. Ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting some turbulence as we pass over the Rockies. Please remain seated. Crew, Echo, November 5th. Prepare for weather. It sounded like nothing. It was everything. Her code name, buried inside a weather warning. The pilot was in trouble. Or he wasn't in full control. And whatever was about to happen, it wasn't going. To wait for her convenience, she slipped her hand into the seat back pocket, past the sick bag, fingers closing over the edge of a folded emergency instruction card. Behind it, where no one would look, her fingertips found the cool surface of a razor-thin ceramic strip. She'd hidden it there on a return flight months ago. Just in case. Just in case was now. The strip slid into her sleeve, snug against her wrist. No more signals. No more waiting. She rose, the movement casual enough not to draw stares, as she passed row 14. The man's eyes opened, controlled, assessing. Her right hand flexed inside her sleeve. One wrong move from him, and this plane's quiet. Anonymous passenger in row 5 would no longer exist. Only Echo November 5th would. He didn't blink, neither did she. 14C's breathing stayed measured, but his right shoulder shifted ever so slightly under the blanket. Not enough to draw a casual eye, but enough for hers. Sarah slowed her pace, continuing down the aisle like she had somewhere else to be. She counted steps. 1, 2. Now out of his peripheral vision, behind her, she heard the faint rustle of fabric. Something was moving under that blanket. She reached the rear galley, placed a hand on the cool metal of the counter, and let herself look forward down the aisle. 14C was still there, still playing asleep, still keeping his right hand out of sight. She scanned the cabin again. 21D was leaning forward now, forearms on his knees, gaze tilted down but alert. If he wasn't the secondary, he was pretending to be one. Either way, he was watching her, not the rest of the passengers. The situation was tightening. Jessie emerged from the forward galley, her face set, and gave a small nod. It was time, Sarah. Stepped back into the aisle and walked. Not rushed, not tense, just deliberate. As she passed 16, she caught the faint sound of plastic clicking beneath fabric. A switch? A safety? Her eyes narrowed. In 15, she leaned toward the row as if checking the seat number, but really to get her angle right. She stopped at 14. Her left hand gripped the seat back in front of him, steadying her. "Sir," she said evenly, "I'm going." "To need you to stand up now." His eyes opened slowly, cold, calculated. "I'm sorry?" His voice was flat, almost bored. "You heard me." His right hand twitched under the blanket. The ceramic strip was in her palm before the twitch ended. She yanked the blanket with her left hand, the other driving the strip down on his wrist. A sharp gasp broke from him, then a shout. The passengers flinched. Sarah twisted his arm toward the aisle, forcing the object in his hand, matte black, no visible markings, to tumble onto the carpet. The woman in 13B recoiled into the window. People were staring now, the confusion turning into fear. "Everyone stay calm," Sarah said, her voice low but carrying. "Remain in your seats." Her eyes never left 14C, hands where I can see them. He didn't move. She locked her forearm against the back of his neck, leveraging his weight forward, and slid a flexible zip tie from her pocket. In one practice motion, his wrists "We're bound. You have no idea," he began. But she cut him off by driving his shoulder into the seat edge hard enough to make him bite back a cry. "I've got a pretty good idea," she murmured. The black device skittered toward the galley. Jessie appeared, snatched it up with a white-knuckled grip. "Don't press anything," Sarah warned without looking at her. The cabin was dead quiet. Now, except for the thump of footsteps too fast, she turned. 21D was on his feet, hand in his coat. "Sit down," Sarah ordered. He kept moving. Jessie moved faster than anyone expected, ramming a service card into his knees. He hit the floor. With a grunt, the case in his hands sliding toward Sarah, she scooped it up. Small, hard plastic, blinking red. Not a detonator, a transmitter. Her mind made the leap instantly. They weren't trying to blow up the plane. They were trying to take it. Cabin lockout. The note had warned her. A chirp in her ears startled her, a sound she hadn't heard in years. The microbud buried in her jacket lying was awake. A male voice, low, deliberate. "Echo, November 5th. This is Tower 3. Do you copy?" She pressed the mic embedded in her bracelet. Copy. Captain's locked out. Cockpit override failed. You have 11 minutes until you pass over apex grid. Interceptors are standing by. We need visual confirmation of the device. She glanced toward Jessie, holding the black box in her trembling hands. Device is a jammer and signal rerouter, Sarah said. Not explosive, likely onboard transmission. Attempted cockpit hijack. 2 suspects in custody. Possible third. Pause. Then, copy that. Proceed with full clearance. You're the highest-ranking asset on board. Repeat your command. She hated that word, command. It wasn't permission. It was ownership. Total responsibility for everyone on this plane. She exhaled slowly, eyes sweeping the cabin. 14C glared at her. 21D groaned on the floor. Jessie was pale but steady. Passengers were frozen, half praying, half trying to vanish into their seats. It wasn't over, not even close. The hum of the engines felt heavier now, like the whole plane was listening. Jessie's keys jangled softly as she unlocked the floor panel. Metal clicked against metal. The hatch lifted with a groan. Sarah dropped into the maintenance crawl space. Without hesitation, the air was warmer here, close to the heat bleed from auxiliary systems, and it smelled faintly of hydraulic oil and insulation. She kept low, elbows scraping the sides, following the tiny stenciled numbers until 180 came. Into view, a silver case waited inside, smooth, featureless. The latch gave way too easily. Inside, a second jammer, bigger, pulsing with cold blue light, and a control pad already active on the display. A countdown ticking down from 10 minutes. And a line of text that made her stomach go cold. Auto override ACTIV. Her eyes flicked to the bottom of the screen. Coordinates, not San Francisco, not anywhere near Apex. She shut the case and forced herself to breathe evenly. Apex wasn't just a military site. It was a nuclear materials transfer hub, a no-fly zone where unidentified aircraft were shot down without questions. Someone wanted this plane destroyed by its own side. She crawled back, surfaced into the galley. Jessie was waiting wide-eyed. It's real, Sarah whispered. And active. What now? Jessie's voice was barely there. Now I need into the cockpit. It's sealed. We tried 3 times. Deadlocks. It's like someone welded it shut. Sarah froze. Who tried? Me and Marcus. Co-pilot opened it once 5 minutes after. Takeoff, said the captain was resting. Then it locked. He hasn't come out since. Her mind started stacking the pieces. Marcus, tall, quiet, last-minute roster change. Too perfect to be coincidence. He's your inside man, she said flatly. Jessie didn't argue. Sarah keyed her mic. Tower 3, copy. Cockpit sealed. Co-pilot alive. Hostile operator inside. Override countdown active. 10 minutes to breach. Pause. Negative on breach. Doors armored. Post 911 spec. Rifle wouldn't break it midair. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then give me something else. Another pause. Emergency circuit relay under main cabin fuse panel. Ties to cockpit. Failsafe, but not accessible during flight. Her mind raced. Unless we drop pressure. Simulate decompression. Risky, the voice said. Dangerous. Could cause panic. Panic's better than dead. She turned to Jessie. Where's the valve release? Behind row 1, under the floor panel. Sarah moved fast, sliding past first-class passengers, whose murmurs stopped when they saw her face. She popped the panel, tore off the safety cap, and twisted. The cabin lights flickered. A synthetic voice cut in. Pressure alert. System override in progress. Oxygen masks dropped like yellow fruit on strings. Gasps rose, fear swelling instantly. The cockpit door clicked. Sarah didn't wait. She bolted forward, slammed the door open, and stopped dead. The captain slumped over, temple bruised, one eye swollen shut. The co-pilot sat belted in, dazed. pupils slow to react. And Marcus, tall, lean, eyes like frost, stood over the flight controls, hands flying over the keypad. He turned, saw her, and recognition hit like a weapon. "You," he spat. "They said you were out." She stepped in, ceramic strip ready. "I was, until now." He lunged. The first blow skimmed her shoulder as she pivoted. His elbow slammed the panel beside her. Sparks spitting out. He came again, faster. Aiming for her wrist, she ducked low, driving her shoulder into his chest. Shoving him back into the captain's seat, he twisted, reaching for a concealed sidearm. She jammed the ceramic strip into his collarbone, electricity arcing through the conductive edge. His scream was sharp, but short-lived. "Too slow," she said, and jabbed the strip into the side of his neck. He dropped. The co-pilot's breathing was shallow, but steadying. She moved to his side. "You with me?" He blinked, fought for focus. Knew someone would come. "We've got 6 minutes. Let's take our plane back." The cockpit was chaos, screens blinking red, the air smelling faintly of burnt insulation. Marcus twitched faintly at her feet. "What's our altitude?" she asked. 32,000 dropping. Auto navs locked on apex zone. "That's the plan," she said grimly. "False flag. They want us shot down." He reached for the control stick. "Not happening." She slid into the co-pilot's seat, strapping in. "What's still ours?" "Verticals and rudder. Enough to redirect. Not enough to climb fast." The override timer was down to 3 minutes. Then she saw it. A small secondary screen hidden near Marcus's leg. Countdown. 2 minutes 58 below it. Relay 2. Ground link active. Her pulse spiked. Second override, remote uplink. "If they get it, we're done," he said. She didn't hesitate. Drew Marcus's sidearm and fired point blank into the relay. Sparks sprayed. The screen went black. "That'll wake the passengers," he muttered. "They're already awake." She keyed her mic. "Tower 3, cockpit secured. Hostile neutralized, second override disabled. Request immediate westbound clearance. Echo November 5th. Cleared to reroute bearing 270. Execute now, or military response will be authorized." She looked at the co-pilot. "Bypass dampeners." Click. "Bypass enabled." They pulled together. The aircraft groaned, veering sharply away from its death run. Passengers screamed as turbulence rattled the cabin. The radar adjusted, westbound locked. A voice came over the comms. "Flight 219. This is Falcon 1, interceptors. Disengaging, you are outside restricted grid. Proceed to emergency diversion route. Godspeed." Sarah exhaled. It wasn't over, but they were still alive. The cockpit's hum felt different now. Not tense, not relieved, just waiting. Sarah unbuckled, crouched beside Marcus's slumped form. She wasn't looking for weapons anymore. She was looking for what men like him never traveled without. Her fingers skimmed over his jacket, belt, pockets, nothing. Then, in the heel of his right boot, she felt it. A hard, thumbnail-sized disc, flush with the leather. She pried it out with the butt of his own sidearm. A micro GPS chip, active. Not just control, surveillance. Someone on the ground was watching this in real time. She turned it in the light, the blinking LED reflecting off the cracked cockpit window. The co-pilot caught her expression. "More trouble?" he asked. "Yeah," she said quietly, "but not here." She slipped the chip into a small foil pouch from her belt, standard field trick to block transmission, and stood. The cockpit door hung open behind her. She could hear the passengers. Now, no one was screaming. No one was moving much at all. Just a heavy, charged silence. She stepped into the cabin. Rows of faces turned toward her. Mothers clutching children. Businessmen frozen mid-keystroke. An elderly couple holding hands so tight their knuckles whitened. They saw the sidearm at her hip. The dark smudges on her face. The bruising already forming along her jaw. A girl in row 7 couldn't have been more than 10. Her voice was almost a whisper. Are we going to die? Sarah stopped, met her eyes. Not today. It was only 2 words, but in that cabin, they sounded louder than the engines. Scattered applause began, hesitant, then growing not joy, not even relief, just the sound of human beings reaching for something to hold on to. Jessie appeared at her shoulder, cheeks flushed, eyes red. Is it over? Sarah shook her head. The plane's safe. But the people behind this? They're not here, Jessie frowned. Then where? A dull metallic thud cut her off. It came from below. Sarah's head turned sharply toward the rear of the aircraft. The sound came again. Muffled, deliberate. Someone was down there. Cargo hold, she said under her breath. Jessie stiffened. A passenger? No, passengers would have moved by now. Whoever's in the hold didn't want to be found until it was too late. They moved fast. Passengers craned their necks, watching as Sarah's steps sharpened, pistol now in her hand. She scanned every overhead bin, every exit door as she passed, at the rear galley. She saw it, the hatch to the underbelly service stairwell, sitting ajar by less than an inch. She turned to Jessie. Seal the aisle. Nobody follows. Jessie shoved a service card across the space. Anchoring it like a barricade, Sarah crouched, palm flat against the metal hatch. It was warm, too warm for the unpressurized space beneath the cabin. Another thud, closer, then silence. She opened the hatch. Metal stairs spiraled into darkness. No cabin light reached down here. Just the hum of auxiliary power and the faint vibration of flight through her boots. She descended, pistol leading, her left hand skimming the wall for balance. The cargo bay was colder than it should have been. Refrigerated containers lined the left wall, marked for medical shipment. On the right, commercial freight, sealed. Cases, tagged and numbered. All routine, except one near the rear bulkhead. Tucked behind 2 pallets, sat a black crate, no tags, no seals. And it was moving. Every step toward it felt like a mile. Her breath was steady, but her heart was beginning to drum in her ears. At 2 feet away, the lid hissed, smooth, hydraulic. Sarah stepped back fast, pistol raised. The lid cracked open. Inside wasn't a weapon. It was a boy, thin, maybe 13, eyes wide, lips pale, bound in a silver restraint harness that glowed faintly at the seams. No sound came from him. His mouth moved, but nothing reached her ears over the drone of the engines. She lowered the muzzle, stepped in. Hey, I'm here to help you. He stared at her, unblinking, and mouthed the words again. She leaned closer, reading his lips. He's not alone. The shift in her stomach was instant. She turned too late. A shadow lunged from between the freight stacks. Steel flashed at her face. She dropped onto the blade, the air above her hissing with its passing. Her kick swept low, catching the attackers. Knee. He staggered but stayed upright, pivoting in close, fast, silent, trained. This wasn't a smuggler. This was a cleanup asset, the kind you sent to erase loose ends. Her pistol barked once. The shot sparked off a crate as he rolled. Impossibly quick, she closed the gap, catching his wrist, twisting until the blade fell. He didn't cry out. He smiled through blood on his teeth. I know who you are, he hissed. She didn't answer. One clean strike snapped his elbow. Another drove his skull into the crate. He went limp. She stayed still, listening for any other movement. Nothing. The boy was staring at her, eyes wide. What's your name? She asked, kneeling. Ben. His voice was raw. Do you know where they were taking you? He shook his head. I woke up in a truck, then this crate. I heard them say something about the handoff and Phase 2. Sarah's pulse picked up again. Phase 2 meant whatever was happening here was only the opening move. She cut the restraints, helped him stand. His legs were unsteady, but he stayed upright. Come on, she said. They climbed back into the galley. The cabin's tension hadn't broken. Passengers still whispered in the low, Restless way of people who know something is wrong, but don't understand what. Jesse saw the blood on Sarah's jacket and froze. What now? Now we land, Sarah said. Then we burn the trail they left. Ben grabbed her sleeve. They said, if you survived, they'd come for you next. They already are. Jesse's face paled. You think there's another one? Sarah's eyes were grim. No, there's another plane. The Nevada emergency strip shimmered under the late afternoon sun. Cracked pavement, rusting hangars, a skeletal tower leaning against the desert sky. It hadn't been used in over a decade, which Sarah knew was exactly why they'd been sent here. She stood at the top of the air stairs, scanning the surrounding hills. Not for rescue, for retaliation. Stay close, she told Jesse and Ben. We've got minutes before command arrives. Maybe less, Jesse frowned. Aren't they coming to help? Sarah kept her eyes on the horizon. They're coming to contain. Below, passengers were being herded onto the tarmac by armed men in dark tactical gear. No flags, no patches. Every question from a passenger met with the same flat. Please proceed. Ben clung to her arm. They said, if the plane failed, they'd use the sister flight. She crouched to meet his eyes. Sister flight? He nodded quickly. It left after ours, smaller, but the man said it had more than one passenger like me. Her stomach tightened. More than one. Destination? She asked. I don't know, just... They said it was going to the handoff. Jessie tapped her tablet, fingers moving fast. There's one other private flight that left the same hangar an hour after us. Filed under a shell company. Registered as an organ donor transport. Destination. International waters. Sarah's mind locked on it instantly. Offshoring the lab. Beyond jurisdiction. Jessie's eyes narrowed. How do we stop a plane that's already in the sky? Ben's voice was small but certain. They said only you could, because of your name. Sarah froze. What did they call me? Ben hesitated. They said your real name isn't Sarah. They called you Callan Iris 7. Jessie's gaze flicked to her. What does that mean? Sarah stood slowly, her voice lower now. It means I wasn't supposed to exist. Born off book, trained in silence, embedded deep until I vanished. Project Mirrorgate thought I was theirs. I wasn't. Jessie's expression was somewhere between awe and alarm. You were one of them. I was made by them, Sarah said. Then I broke loose, then swallowed. They said you'd either come back or be forced back. Sarah looked at the cluster of armed men corralling passengers. They don't want to debrief me. They want to erase me, just like Marcus. An SUV rolled onto the tarmac. 3 men stepped out. Not soldiers, not agents. Too still, eyes too flat. The lead one spoke into a mic. Target is on sight. Proceed with fallback protocol. Sarah turned to Jessie. We're not staying. Where can we go? Jessie asked quickly. Sarah scanned the far side of the field. A hangar half collapsed from years of sun and wind, but inside. That one, she said. Already moving. They ran. Jessie half dragging Ben to keep him close. Shouts rose behind them. Orders barked into earpieces. Sarah hit the hangar door hard enough to rattle its hinges. Inside, the air smelled of dust and hydraulic oil, and there, in the shadows, sat a twin-rotor prototype from her old unit. Jessie stared. Please tell me you know how to fly this. Sarah was already climbing into the cockpit. I trained pilots. Gunfire cracked outside, warning shots. The agents were closing in. Ben, down on the floor. Sarah shouted, Jessie, strap in. She flipped switches in a sequence her hands remembered before her mind did. The engine coughed, then roared. Bullets sparked against the hangar walls. She pushed the throttle. The rotors spun faster. Dust billowing in choking clouds. Hold on, she said, locking the cockpit. The prototype surged upward, clearing the hangar mouth. Pings of small arms fire rang off the fuselage. One round cracked the side window. They were airborne. Jesse exhaled sharply. You just stole government tech. They stole children. Sarah said without looking at her. We're even. Ben pointed at a blinking dot on the radar. That's it. That's the sister plane. Altitude, 28,000. Heading south toward the Gulf Stream. They're aiming for international airspace, Jesse said. Not if we intercept first. Sarah pushed the throttle again. The desert blurred beneath them as they closed the gap. The radar lit up with 3 new blips. Escorts, Jesse murmured. Black jets, no markings. Sarah's voice was steady. Apex's Ghost Squadron. They don't exist. They don't miss. Jesse's knuckles whitened. How do we survive them? We don't fight them, Sarah said, flipping a hidden toggle. The instruments dimmed, then shimmered. The radar return faded to nothing. Experimental stealth mode, never tested in combat. The escorts flew on, unaware. Sarah brought the prototype low, approaching the sister plane from beneath. Ben's voice trembled. There are more kids like me in there. Jesse's jaw tightened. Then let's bring them home. Sarah locked onto the cargo ramp. One shot, in and out, ready? Jesse nodded. Ben swallowed hard and gripped her arm. The sky ahead shimmered with turbulence. The real storm was about to start. The distance between them and the sister plane was closing, but not fast enough for comfort. Sarah eased the prototype upward, keeping it tucked beneath the belly of the larger transport. At this altitude, one bad gust could slam them into its fuselage. She flicked a glance at Ben. You going to open that ramp for us? His eyes widened. Me? You've seen the latch before. You can do it. Her voice was calm, flat, leaving no space for hesitation. Ben's hands trembled. What if I? No what ifs. You can. She toggled the manual override on the prototype's side hatch. Cold air knifed into the cabin, tearing at their clothes and hair. The roar of wind swallowed the rest of her words. Jesse clipped a safety line to Ben's harness. 3 points of contact at all times. She yelled over the noise. Ben nodded. Once, eyes locked on Sarah's steady gaze. 20 feet of open air now separated the 2 aircraft. Sarah engaged the magnetic bridge, a telescoping frame with handholds, locking into place against the undercarriage of the sister plane. Go, she said. Ben crawled onto the bridge. Body low, fingers white-knuckled on the grips. Every sway of the aircraft made his stomach lurch. He didn't look down. He didn't dare. Inside the sister plane's cargo bay, the world was quiet by comparison. Sedated children sat buckled in rows, oxygen lines taped to their small faces. An armed woman paced the aisle. At the front, a man sipped coffee, eyes on a tablet streaming encrypted flight data. ETA to drop point? The woman asked. 11 minutes, he replied. Final phase begins at 12:40. They didn't know death was crawling toward their ramp. Ben reached the latch. His hand shook, fumbling for a moment before he found the release. He pulled. The lock disengaged with a deep hydraulic hiss. In the cargo bay, red lights began to strobe. The ramp yawned downward, wind screaming into the hold. Sarah brought the prototype tight against the opening. Jesse fired a grapple into the ramp floor, locking the 2 aircraft together. Move! Sarah shouted, unstrapping. She vaulted across the narrow gap, boots slamming onto the ramp. Jesse followed, Ben tumbling in after her, gasping from the adrenaline rush. The woman guard spun, weapon half raised. Sarah's kick hit her square in the sternum, sending her back into the wall. She crumpled, breathless. Clear the aisle. Jessie barked, swinging her own sidearm to cover the man at the front. He stared, stunned. Who the hell? Sarah tossed a small black card onto the floor at his feet. The sigil glared up at him, a black iris ringed in white, recognition. Drained the color from his face. She shot the tablet out of his hand. Hands where I can see them, he obeyed. Slowly, eyes darting toward the cockpit. Jesse, secure him. Jesse cuffed the man to the seat frame, then began. moving down the rows, checking each child's vitals. Sedated but stable, she called. We've got time. Sarah pushed into the cockpit. The pilot was mid-transmission. Base. We've been compromised. Repeat. Compromised. Her arm looped around his neck, yanking him back from the controls. He hit the deck, coughing. Not today, she said, sliding into the seat. Jesse joined her. What's the plan? We drop altitude, reroute over New Mexico, land at Ghost Station 7. Jesse blinked. That place is real? It's where I vanished. She banked the aircraft left, the autopilot's programmed route dissolving from the display. The Ghost Squadron's escorts began to shift, their patterns tightening. Sarah? Jesse pointed at the radar. 3 birds inbound, and they're fast. Sarah's stomach sank. Missiles? Not yet. Then there comes crackled Ghost Squadron chatter, encrypted but faintly audible. She caught enough to understand. Target confirmed. Engage at will. The first missile launched 30 seconds later. Not at them, at the prototype still linked to the ramp. They think we're still in it, Jesse realized. Sarah's lips tightened. Good. Let's keep it that way. The missile struck midair. A flash lit the sky. Debris spun away into the cloud cover. The Logos has destroyed, Jesse said quietly. Then let's disappear for real, Sarah replied. She dropped the sister plane to 12,000 feet, hugging the folds of the desert terrain. The escort's radar had lost them entirely. Stealth mode on the prototype had masked the smaller aircraft's transponder. But now, the sister plane's ID was broadcasting as a generic cargo hauler. 15 minutes later, a sliver of tarmac appeared between red mesas. It looked abandoned until hangar doors began to grind open. Figures emerged, not young, not active duty. Men and women in faded uniforms from a dozen agencies that no longer officially existed. Sarah felt her grip ease slightly on the controls. They had made it. The wheels touched down hard, bouncing once before gripping the cracked tarmac. Dust kicked up in the wake, swirling in the thin desert light. Sarah kept the nose steady, easing the throttles back until the plane rolled to a crawl. The air here was different, thinner, drier, touched with the faint metallic taste of sand on wind. The hangar doors were already open, their shadows long and jagged across the strip. Figures stepped forward as the aircraft taxied in, older men and women. Faces weathered, movements deliberate. Their uniforms didn't match, but they shared something more telling than insignia. The posture of people who had seen everything worth surviving. One man, tall even with the stoop of age, leaned on a cane as he came forward. His eyes scanned the cockpit windows, found her, and didn't look away. Sarah powered down the engines and stepped into the aisle. Jesse was already unbuckling the first child. Ben stood near the ramp, watching the hangar grow closer, his face somewhere between relief and disbelief. When the hatch dropped, the desert heat rolled in, dry and immediate. The man with the cane was waiting at the base of the stairs. You came back, he said simply. Iris 7, Sarah replied, meeting his gaze. He looked past her at the children being carried down by Jesse and the hangar crew. Cargo, he said grimly. Alive, Sarah said. Sedated, stable. His jaw tightened. Project Marigate wasn't shut down. It just went on the ground. No, she said. Now we shut it down for good. Ben appeared at her side, blinking in the sunlight. What happens now? She crouched to meet his eyes. Now you're safe. And we make sure no one ever uses kids like you again. His voice was barely a whisper. You came back for me. I never stopped watching, she said. He smiled for the first time. Small, tentative. Before the crew led him toward the hangar, Jessie approached, a tablet in her hands. You need to see this, on screen. A press conference. A senator at a podium, flags behind him, speaking into a bank of microphones. Flight 219 experienced a mechanical anomaly, he was saying. but landed safely thanks to the brave actions of the crew. No mention of Apex, no mention of Marigate, no mention of Sarah Lawson or Iris 7. Jessie looked at her. Back. To silence. Sarah didn't blink. Good. They'll never see us coming. They moved the children into the hangar's interior, cooler, dim, and lined with equipment that looked like it had been scavenged from 5 different agencies over the years. The medics worked without questions, checking vitals, logging each face. Sarah stood back, watching. It wasn't that she didn't care. It was that she couldn't stay still too long. Not now, not here. The man with the cane stepped up beside her. You know they'll try again. She kept her eyes on the children. Then I'll be there again. He studied her for a long moment. We could use you here, full time. Her mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. That's not what I do. What do you do then? I make sure the wrong people don't get to finish their sentences. He nodded once. That was enough. Outside, the last of the sunlight slipped behind the red mesas, painting the strip in long shadows. Somewhere beyond that horizon, someone would already be rewriting today's events into something that fit neatly into an official report. Let them. Sarah walked to the far edge of the tarmac. The airfield was quiet now, the kind of quiet that only comes after something has been stopped but not ended. She looked up. The first stars were showing, bright and cold against the deepening sky. Her past had come for her today, not with a letter, not with a summons, but with a plane full of strangers who would have died without ever knowing her name. She had met it head on, and now she wasn't a ghost anymore. She was a reckoning. Somewhere out there, Marigate was still breathing. Somewhere out there, the architects of Apex were already moving to the next phase. And somewhere out there, another set of coordinates was waiting. She turned back toward the hangar, where Jessie was helping Ben into a clean shirt, where the children were sipping water and blinking under harsh lights, where the people she'd saved were learning to be still again. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was almost too soft to hear. Sometimes, she said, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She stepped into the hangar's shadow, and the desert took her silhouette like it had been expecting her all along.